Good morning. I am higher vibrations, and so are you. And my voice is kind of interesting. Anyway, Josh is running a little bit late. I was running late today too, so it worked out great for me. So I just thought I'd get started because I saw that there were some of you in the audience, and we'll just have a kind of a Q&A sort of situation until Josh shows up. No problem if you're in the audience, Josh. I'm good. And I just can't. I'm happy when you get here. Anyway, yeah, there is a lot of crazy energy. Anybody else have this experience? I last night was crazy. Last night was such a crazy night. My hair looks really weird with that background. It makes it look like there's like a big ball there. Uh, I couldn't. I wasn't. I had no desire to sleep, though. I ended up just falling asleep in the middle of the. So I had some things going on, and then later on in the evening, I just crashed out, like, which would have been probably considered an early bedtime in most places, but for me, it ended up being a nap. My daughter came and woke me up at midnight, and she was like, um, you know, are you gonna stay asleep? And I was like, oh my gosh, and so, but then even though I was so tired, I just couldn't didn't want to or something to go to sleep. And then, this morning was like a ridiculous experience. Oh my goodness. There's anyways, last night was weird. The energy coming through was intense. The Schumann was spiking really heavy when all this stuff was going down. That was like 2 o'clock in the morning my time, so like 12 hours ago from right now. There was a lot of stuff that was happening energetically speaking. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this yet or not because I am just still wowed about this. Is that just a couple of days ago we had this? I always mix it up again. Meteor, comet, asteroid, the one that hits the ground. They change names after they change location. They typically always come at a trajectory on like an angle, and this particular one came straight down. And since it came and also landed like in Louisiana, yeah, just on the anyway. Um, while this is happening, all of a sudden there's this boom of energy in the Schumann. And it's gotten the attention of a lot of people who had been kind of naysayers regarding the Schumann. It started because it began to like reverberate too. And this particular stream of energy that came in at that moment um, was so profound that every one of us felt it. It was incredible. Hey, I just saw palpitations pop up because I was going to say something about that. Um, Genevieve, hey Genevieve, haven't seen you for a while. Yeah, this heart space palpitations is exactly what I was getting ready to talk about. And it's really uncomfortable, and also like it can, for me, out of all the different ascension symptoms that we have when it comes to the heart kind of stuff, it's always that moment where it's like, okay, just stay in, you're good. You don't have to go to a place of fear about this, but because it's the heart. However, if you are having anything, then you have the desire to have a medical professional check you out so you can calm your concerns, then of course do it. However, I don't do that kind of thing anymore. I used to. I used to go a lot. Hey, I just got a sis says we got a very high UV spike. That's usually a moment when we're having a solar flare thing. I actually didn't even look at the solar flares today. I was looking at everything else before we came on. Yeah, I don't see any. Let me look. Isn't that funny that I haven't actually looked at the solar flares for a little bit? Yeah, we're only in the seas. It's not. Sea is still pretty good. Energy coming in. But yeah. Anyway, this was really cool how it happened. This phenomenon that occurred and the location and how it occurred and stuff. So if you're interested, check it out. I've spent most of my time in that rabbit hole looking for any other space born trajectory with a trajectory that isn't at an angle. And so far, I've not been able to find it. Very fascinating. And since then, that was on Thursday. And since then, we've had some pretty serious activation days. The 30th, just a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, that was considered, that was Artemis Day, because both Mars and Moon were conjunct, in conjunction. So that's really cool. Anyways, and that's one of those spike days, that we've been having. Thank you. I have had this before, but not like this intense. I know it's really intense. It can feel really intense. Yay, caught you live. Big love. Good to see you. It started around that time for me too. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, not good, but I'm just telling you, that's awesome that we were able to validate each other. Yes, palpitations, Carolina says too. Yeah, dude, there's so much going on, and when we feel it, evening mystical insights, it's good to know that you're not alone. It's good to know that you're here, experiencing a global sensation, a global experience, you know and I know that Joshua will be coming. He said he's just running a couple minutes late, and I thought I just go on, just come on for a little kind of Q&A sort of style chat, and then I was already running late too. There's been a lot. I barely got out of bed today, man. I really normally I'm awake a lot longer than I am right now before I go live. My daughter's asleep. She's crashed out. In fact, she was sleeping in my bed. I was like, hey, you want to be in here where I'm being loud? Because where I do this from is a very large space that's used as many different rooms. So anyway, hello, April. Good to see you. Welcome. Olivia, hello. Good to see you. Good evening. There is a lot of stuff happening right now. We're feeling it really strong. In fact, last night when I was having the group conversation, that I have group meditations every Tuesdays. If it's a love donation subscription based gathering every Tuesday. And on occasion, we have a day like we did yesterday, where there was so much to kind of share. We ended up having a 3-hour conversation, and we never did a meditation. Everybody voted on it, but there was so much healing, and there's so much healing in just the conversation, the communication. So if anyone is interested, hit me up. I'll include you in our. We have a mini Telegram group. This is how this is happening. Or it's how we connect. I saw happening. Solar flash is happening since last week. Waves of solar awakening energy happening. Thank you, April. April has really a valid and the solar flash has been happening for quite some time. It's been happening for some time, and the shift of us out of it. There was an energy that we crossed over. I cannot recall for sure it was either February 2nd or February 22nd. I just remember it was a 2 portal day this year. So just a few months ago, 5 months ago, almost exactly, perhaps. And when that happened, that was really the shift where people could start to really notice this shift out of the Kali Yuga. If you know that any of the Vedic teachings regarding the yuga cycles and all that stuff, there's a lot to it. And what's really fascinating, this is a topic that I have yet to really jump down. I really kind of think maybe we'll have a conversation like this soon, on just like that's the topic for the group live or the conversation or something. But is that once you look at things the way, with a different perspective, removing all previous embedded code or meaning behind things, once you get to the other side of it, you find that you can see things a little bit differently, right? Well, if you pull back enough, there's this thing called Satan's little season. And this is supposed to occur for the window of what was this Kali Yuga period, or what's more precise, this period where around 1940 was when we really started to notice it. But it feels like that the reset that occurred there was closer to like the 1880s. And just, it was a progressive thing. What's really interesting though, if you do the math of it and follow like what the calendar says it would be, that would mean that we officially, when we started to really take the massive strides out of Kali Yuga, then we were moving through the other side of what was Satan's little season. Why is this so crazy? Because it implies that um, the second coming, like the Jesus coming thing that they had talked about happening, actually occurred, and already occurred is what that implies. So it's very fascinating. Anyway, so I have my guest in the waiting room, so I just wanted to introduce him real quick and say hello to all of you. Thank you all for coming today. Um, my guest is a dear brother. I love having conversations with him, and I've been looking forward to having him on for quite some time. So I'm really excited that he made it. So I just want to welcome Josh and bring him on the screen here. Welcome. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Doing good. How are
Good.
you today?
Man, I barely made it here.
I
You
noticed.
too. There's like a lot of weird nighttime stuff. Did you have any experience like that last night?
Yeah, I had really vivid dreams last night, this morning. I don't know what was going on there. It's
I'm
like
sorry, you got muffled when you started talking. What did you say?
I had some very vivid dreams last night and this morning.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was about. It's just like so much random stuff going on.
yeah.
I was like hanging out with Survivor Man. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but
I a long time ago.
like I don't know, I was watching it like maybe a week ago for some reason. It's just kind of fun, and then like he was just in my dream last night for some reason, and apparently I knew how to fly a helicopter or something.
Oh, fun.
I don't know what it is. It's kind of funny because sometimes when I'm in a dream world, like there have been times where I've like flown around like somehow like in a helicopter or something like that. And
Mhm.
then when I go back into the dream world, like my dream self remembers that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we were doing that thing the other, like it's its own
Mhm.
reality or something." I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
like picking up where you left off.
yeah, it's yeah, a lot like that. So
Okay.
I don't know how to interpret a lot of the dreams I'm having lately because it is just such a mishmash of so many
Right.
different things, but it I'm left with like a real palpable feeling afterward, like it's just like something auspicious happened, or it was like very um I'm just kind of buzzing after it, like it's like I
Mhm.
was actually out doing things and interacting with people somehow, and like when I wake up in the morning, it feels like, like I'm kind of like still, I don't know, vibing off it really.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I'm finding that I'm having far more nighttime experiences than ever before now too. So it's really interesting to hear your take on that.
So do you have like astral projections and
Yeah.
lucid dreams and things like that?
Yeah, I've been astral projecting since I was little. We didn't even back then they called it out of body experience once we found a word for it. And it was like a new phenomenon that like you whispered about. Like
Keep it
my
underground.
siblings and I used to do it at night when no one and we'd meet each other and then we'd compare notes because we wanted to prove to ourselves it happened. So like you know the we had to it was then we'd fight over who would say what we did first because it was better to be the one being validated than to validate the other one. But yeah, it's something that I've been doing for some time, but I stopped for a while. I put a pause on a lot of my experience through like the teen high school period where you kind of want to be in the 3D kind of.
Yeah, it's hard to well, it's hard when, other people aren't doing experiencing those things.
Yeah,
It's hard to fit in sometimes, and there's a lot of pressure when you're that age.
yeah,
I know that from my own experience, but I remember like I when I first started lucid dreaming, it was really quite spontaneous. And I think I've had a few astral projection experiences, but I think it like like it kind of freaked my body out, so I'd
mhm,
always like kick myself out of it before I could get
yeah,
into it. So I don't know if I feel like I have the capacity to do it, but it's kind of like dormant right now.
yeah,
Although when I know when I'm dreaming, I know that's sort of an astral experience anyway.
That's correct.
But it would be kind of cool to be a little more like, I don't know, a little more in control of it, like a little more like it would
Yeah.
be like right into it a little more. Because right now it just kind of feels like it's, I don't know, kind of like out on the, like I'm observing it from afar a little bit, not so engaged in it as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can initiate it if you want, though. I agree with you. Hey, it's 222. I agree with you. It feels the sensation that comes in, and sometimes it's the sound. Like I remember when I started to do it again in my early 20s, like the sound. It sound to me, it sounded like a train coming almost.
Oh,
Like that, like it just kind of the sound. I don't know how to explain it, but that would always like cause alarm inside of me. And it was so what I learned was to roll out. It's best to like, I don't know why, I don't know if I got this in my head or if this is actually science, because you teach yourself, like I smell sage, I go into a meditative kind of place, you know what I mean? It might be a trigger response that I've taught myself, but um, is that I always do it without crossing any legs or arms. That was just something I learned when I was a kiddo. Like you don't want to be on your side, you want to be on your back. And uh, what you do is um, as you're breathing calmly, um, what you're doing is you're kind of pulling your heart center up and you kind of roll out of your body. That's how you kind
oh,
of first do it. And you always feel disoriented because then you're like upside down and kind of weird when you first come out. But it's and then you don't know how to really move around and control yourself at first. It feels weird. It's because you're aware and you're steering. You're
yeah.
the one steering, and so you have to. It takes you a minute to kind of get it. Um, I've also remember talking to people that we kind of do this. We all kind of did this thing, but some people did it more intentionally. Was that they energetically pulled their finger energy out of their fingers. It was like they were kind of pulling slime off the inside of a Tupperware and kind of
Oh,
like pull all the corners
they kind of
out.
get in the creases and everything, kind of
Right,
like get in there.
as if they're pulling their actual soul, and there's no worries, like yours. Yeah, be aware of your energy and say this is what I'm doing, and that always helps you to calm yourself to not be in that place of fear. Though um you have this, it's like an umbilical cord that's connected to you, that when you're alive, that cord exists, and that cord draws you back so fast, is you don't even get a chance to fully think about where you want to go, and you're already there, so you're
Uh-huh.
safe. There's safety mechanisms in place.
And
Really
that's
cool.
that's the silver cord, isn't it?
That's right.
I've,
And it
yeah.
glitters and it sings. It has this like it sounds like music.
Oh, so
It's
cool.
really subtle, but it's pretty. Yeah. When was when did you start to experience stuff like this? Like how young were you when like how many years ago or something, whatever. Like
Well, I think my first lucid dream, I must have been like 20.
yeah.
I'm 35 now, so about 15 years ago. And that was really cool because it was one of those. Well, I saw this movie called Waking Life. I don't know if you guys have seen that before, but it's basically this movie where this character goes around. He just has these normal. Well, he has conversations with different people, and the whole thing is like, it's just like him having conversations, but the whole thing is kind of like a cartoon. So, and it's like you don't know whether he's awake or he's dreaming the whole time because like normal things are happening, but then this guy in a, like he's on the freeway and like these cars are driving by, and then a guy in a boat, and he's got a boat on wheels and stuff, and he's like wearing a captain's hat, and he'll come pick him up, and they'll like do all these things. So it's this really, it was a really cool movie, and there's this one guy in the movie who was talking about like how he had really got into lucid dreaming, and he was saying like one of the things that you could do to check whether you're dreaming or not is you could go and flip a light switch, and if
Yeah.
the light switch wouldn't turn on, then you knew that you were dreaming. And there was a couple other ones too. And I remember the first time that I did actually have a lucid dream, I thought I had actually woken up because I was like in my house and I got out of bed and everything was normal. But then I go downstairs and I noticed that the LCD lights on the heater were like jumping around, and
Hmm.
it was like going up. It went up to like 1,000 degrees or something, and I was like, my rational mind was like, that's not good. That's not possible. I'm like, I'm trying to turn it down, and the numbers are jumping around and not doing what I want it to do, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, this is just like in the movie, because that was the alarm clock in the movie was doing that same thing, like the LCDs were jumping around. So I look over and I'm like, oh yeah, you can turn the light switch, you can see if that works. So I hit the light switch and the light didn't come on, and then I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
And it was so cool because it was like totally, it was just as vivid as this moment right now,
yeah.
and I really didn't know. And then I look out the window and there's this great big fire like burning out the window, but it was like liquid, almost like the flame was underwater, and it was like
Huh.
doing this thing. And I go outside and then I like there's like the moon, there's a huge moon in the sky, and like the grass was swaying all in unison. And then I kind of just got the feeling I could like jump up and start floating around, so I just jumped up and I was like floating around, and um, and right before I woke up, but before I woke up, there was this big tree and there's a leaf hanging down, and the leaf brushed against my skin, and I could feel it just like it was real, and so that really impressed upon me how profound, you like that dreams they're more than just
Yeah,
make believe. There's something more to it than that.
it's a place.
It
Places.
is. It's a real place that you go, and you have experiences there, and there are rules to it, and there's a certain order to it, like in our material world, but it's different,
Mhm.
and I think it's a lot more flexible and I guess magical, maybe. I don't know
Yeah.
how you would define
Oh
it.
yeah. Well, it's the same as it is in this reality. It's just that we have been taught we can't create our reality, and
Yeah, yeah.
in this other one, it's fluid. Like you'll notice that the even buildings shift and change. The one I learned is write something down and try to read it, and
Oh,
that's how I activate lucid dreaming. Is every time you can't I can't. I've never been. There was one time that I started to read the thing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm reading it," but I was very aware I was dreaming, and I was so excited it woke me up. But I was like, "Wow, I just did the thing." But yeah, that usually will happen. It'll help a lot if you like find something to write on or look for something that's already written, and you'll just find that it's like you can't do it for some reason, then
I've
you'll
noticed that too.
yeah,
Sometimes I've had dreams where like I've been in high school, and like I just totally forget that I've already graduated and everything, and I'm back in school, and I have to take a test, and the numbers are like jumping off the page, and like all this stuff is happening.
yeah,
So like I've definitely had that experience.
that's
I
awesome.
think if I clue into that a little bit more, like if I make a conscious intention before I go in, maybe that would trigger it.
Yeah, lucid dreaming is very similar to astral projection. As I'm sure, obviously you've figured that out. And what's interesting too is that a lot of indigenous cultures um, talk about this place, this astral projection place, as the dream world, and they the act of doing it's called dream walking. And so the fact that they use these coded words for us to see that they're the same, you know it really does help to, because most people, I would say 90% or more of the world's population probably astral projects regularly, but doesn't. Those are the ones that don't know that they do. The others are those who do it with intention or do it and realize that's what's happened or something phenomenal had occurred. And typically it's done while you're sleeping. Like when you get to the lucid dreaming state, that's when you initiate um, like awareness in this astral plane. Um, but before that, most people's dreams that they're reporting these days, and I'm having them too. We're in this council meeting, like there's this like conversation happening, and it to me, I don't see it like like a boardroom. Like I don't see it like official. It's like people gathered around, you know, and but a lot of us are having these types of experiences um, in this what you call dream time, and then we compare notes, and they had the same dreams. It's like how does that happen?
Right. You must have been that you're in the same place.
Right, right. So it's been 15 years since you've been lucid dreaming. How long have you been kind of aware of this like awakening or like the kind of stuff that we typically talk about? Is this something that because you seem I when you come in, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but you have this like not only are you deeply intelligent, but this wisdom and this calmness like a learned master. And I'm just curious because um, there's no measurement on time when it comes to how awake someone is. But when would you call your awakening or your beginning into awareness of that?
I think it was around that same time that
Yeah.
there's some different things were happening, and I started seeing I started having encounters with spirit animals and things like that,
Cool.
and that was actually really profound because that really because I had a deep interest in dream symbolism and things like that,
Hmm.
but I really hadn't made the connection between because you know how dreams they deal in so many symbols and things like that, but then I didn't make the connection that waking life was the same way. I thought that
Hmm.
they were kind of two different things, and then I started encountering like this spirit animal that was like clearly some kind of metaphor, archetype, symbolism, like this living symbol, and I
Yeah.
was having these really strong intuitions whenever I would see this particular animal. And so I was like, waking life is like a dream too.
Yeah.
And it was one of those experiences where, because you really tap into a deeper intuitive side of yourself. And there's like, I guess growing up, there's so much about, you think and you have to rationalize what you're doing and think what you're doing. And that was kind of how I thought for a while. But I think like when I started smoking pot, for instance, that was kind of interesting for me because I noticed that when I would get into a kind of an altered state from that, I would have these really strong intuitions about things that just made undeniable sense, and I couldn't really explain it objectively.
Yeah.
And I realized that I'd really been having those experiences my whole life, but they'd always kind of been put on the back burner. And once I started dabbling, I dabbled in psychedelics a little bit, and that really started opening, taking mushrooms and trying acid and things like that.
Mhm.
Had some really amazing experiences with those. And then shortly after that, I had a dream about a crow, and there was a really, really vivid kind of prophetic dream. It was like all the things that happened in the dream came true later on. And then I started actually seeing this very unique crow in real life. It was an all black crow, but it had a big white feather on one side, on its left wing.
Mhm.
And my my dad was actually the person who saw it first, and he pointed it out. And then I was like, oh, that's odd. I just had that really strange dream about crows, and then I see this guy.
Yeah.
And then the days and weeks after that, that same crow kept coming up. Like I'd have a thought, or I'd have like a breakthrough. Like I'd like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's what that's about. And then the crow would fly by or something right at that moment. And I remember one day I was down by the water, and I had this really strong intuition that, that the crow was like a metaphor for myself, like it was me, but in another form.
Yeah.
And then I remember like just this energy started rising up in me, and I spread my arms out and closed my eyes, and then I had this intuitive feeling like the crow, that I am that crow and the crow is me. And I look over, and then the crow flies. It's like just as I had that feeling, the crow flew right over the water, like maybe like, I don't know, 20 feet away. And I could
Wow.
see its feather and everything. And then I was like, oh my God, like this life is such a profound dream. There's something amazing about this life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really what started it.
That's awesome. The fact that Crow was your initiator is really significant too. Have you looked much up about Crow? I'm just curious.
Well, from what I've read, the crow is like, it kind of keeps, well, it's like a keeper of magic
Mm-hmm.
and a keeper of mysticism, keeper of like ancient knowledge and things like that. It's and it also sometimes, the crow is like really wise, and he can also play the role of like a shadow or a warning. If you're going on the wrong path, or if you're doing something you shouldn't do, the crow will come in and like kind of steer you to the right path. And there is also a thing about the crow where like, this actually is kind of like there's this old story about the crow used to be white, and Apollo actually burned him. That's why the crow turned black, because he's the messenger, and he'll give you good news and bad news. Like he's really quite impartial in that way. And sometimes people with crow medicine as a totem, sometimes they get burned for being the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually quite profound when I first learned about that, because I felt like I was um, getting a bit burned for, kind of being more like, I'm being vocal about certain things that I was learning about at the time. And not everybody wants to hear the truth. I think we all know that to some extent,
Right.
especially when you think you know something, like, oh, you guys got to hear this is how it's really happening. And then somebody who's like, they don't want their world stirred up, so they kind of burn you a bit.
Right.
But that was kind of that was how the crow, he apparently told Apollo that his wife was having an affair, and then Apollo really didn't like that, so he burned the crow, and that's why the crow turned black. And I
Yeah.
guess he used to be white.
I
So I
do
think
remember hearing that story.
it reminded me of, you were mentioning a story about Apollo
Yeah.
on, I think it was, I don't know, it was on Sunday, I think it was, because you had mentioned that Ares was turning over to Artemis,
Yeah.
and that, what was it? There was a connection with Apollo.
They're twins. Artemis and Apollo are twins that they were born. They were in gestation at the same time in their mother's womb, though they were born a year apart, and she was pregnant for 5 years total.
Huh.
It's a very
Wonder how
and
that works.
yeah, and then they were 5 and 6 when the jealous uh, concubines of Zeus's wife, who was the father, found the mom and ended her. So the children, Apollo and Artemis, spent the rest of their formative years, like seeking revenge and succeeding. But
Oh,
and
so
then
tell about it.
Apollo is a trickster. He also did the same thing to Artemis. He was actually in love with Artemis, his sister, and she had a boyfriend named Orion, and he tricked her into killing him, and
Huh.
by shooting him with an arrow, not realizing that it wasn't a stone in the river. And so, yeah. Anyway, there's a lot going on about Artemis and Apollo right now.
Yeah, there definitely is.
And the first moon launch was called Apollo. Like I've thought so many times about this, where like I saw this meme, that guy, he's like in like the audience or whatever, you see this guy a lot, but it says Artemis when they named the first moon landing Apollo. Like that's rude.
Yeah, Come on, guys. The guy's a jerk.
There's a lot about Apollo and Crow. And the fact that Crow, so it's the keeper of sacred law. Also, like I Crow is really fascinating. It's. I'm so glad you brought this up because um, every time that there's been an important or something very transitional about my life, the crows show up in mass. In
Mhm.
fact, when I was in between, so I was choosing whether or not I was going to stay here or not, basically. I was with a terminal illness that ended up just disappearing. Um, is that crows were all lining on my what do you call, they call them telephone poles, but they're not actually for telephones. I don't know why they call them that. But the wire, they were lined up all around. They were all looking right at my house. So much that they messed up the cords. The weight of them broke one of them.
Ooh. Oh my
And like
god.
right after that was the beginning of the edit. That actually occurred in the March of 2012. That was a
Oh,
really big deal.
so right around that same time. I think that's right around the time I was having all these experiences. 2011, 2000, yeah, 2011, 2012, right before that kind of
Yeah,
period. I think that, like, a lot of people were saying that 2012 was going to be the end, but I think it really was like a pivotal. It's like a turning point, really,
yeah,
because it seems like we were kind of built. It was like we were building up to this transition that was going to start happening, or
mhm,
at least was going to be accelerated significantly after that point. It certainly seems like it has.
exactly. I mean, I agree with you. In fact, if you do the if you actually follow the reckoning of the how they've changed the calendar so much, and they like added 1,000 years one time, and then they added almost 300 years another time. So like, and so there's no history between this year and this year, and like because it didn't exist, it didn't happen. They're like, it'd be like right now is saying, you know, I kind of like it being 30-25 better. What do y'all think? Okay, let's do it. Like that's basically what they did. And um as well as, the Gregorian calendar changed the way that the counting happens. And anyway, long story short, if you do all that math, then technically well, if you don't take into account the 1,300 years that were added, they that would have landed what the Mayan calendar expired at was June 20th, 2020, which was
Oh
time of plague, locusts. There was that they opened that tomb with the curse on it, and they read the curse on live while they were prying it open with crowbars. Do you remember that happening in June?
no, I
It
didn't.
was
I don't think I saw that. What
I
what happened there?
they found this sarcophagus, this big. Yeah, I don't know if it's called a sarcophagus when the container where the mummified person's in. Is it called a sarcophagus, right?
Yeah, I've
Um,
always heard it like that.
well, they found one in Africa. I believe it was like South Africa, but I could be mistaken. And it was the same place that they were having a total eclipse for.
Oh, coincidentally.
Yeah. Yeah, they were having a total eclipse over right there in that same spot. And also, that was the day before of the solstice. That was the first year that they ever recognized um, the Juneteenth holiday, which has a lot to do with our friends from Africa, or I don't even know if they're from Africa. Honestly, there's a lot of stories saying that there was a lot of people here before the the Europeans arrived. Anyway, they found this sarcophagus, and I watched it. I was we were in lockdown. Didn't have a lot going on, and someone was reading what was written on it. In the local language, and then someone was translating it for the benefit of all the live stream people watching, and they had these crowbar things, and they were like forcing the lid open, and it says all these curses that will befall you if you open it, and they're reading it, and I was like, guys, stop. Like, look what's happening. this is the height of lockdown. The vaccine started showing up right then. All
Wow.
this stuff was going on.
So they were,
Don't mess with it.
yeah, they were totally performing a ritual there,
Yeah. Yeah.
which they do, the whole, I don't, that's a whole rabbit hole to get into.
You're welcome to
But
jump down any rabbit hole you want to. You can kind of steer this conversation.
okay. Well, the whole thing about CERN doing like that was kind of eye opening to me because like they were supposed to be a scientific institution and yet they have like a big Shiva on the sign. Like if you go to the CERN Institute, there's a big statue of Shiva, and Shiva, which is another how they take the holy symbols and they kind of pervert them and stuff. And they had this whole when they were opening up the I think it was the hadron collider. I'm not sure how they pronounce
Hydrogen.
it. Hadron, yep. And when they were, I think they were first unveiling it or they were going to boot it up, they had this whole like demonic ritual that they publicized and televised. And they had all these like world elites that were there, all these like really kind of high ups, I guess, in that hierarchy were attending the event. And they had these, it was like a Hollywood production. They had this big screen and they had like this guy with ram horns and he was doing all this stuff on the screen. And it was like, just like, if this really isn't an occult ritual, then what is all of this? I mean, seriously, like how can anyone explain that as being just like they're just they're just putting on a show for everyone's entertainment? It's like,
Right.
well, what exactly is entertainment then? If that's what what's going on TV and stuff, it's just really strange.
Yeah.
And there's the thing like also that like with the all-seeing eye, the eye on top of the pyramid. I think the way that kind of thing works, is that like that's actually a very powerful holy symbol. Same thing with like Shiva, same thing with like the swastika, and all these and probably some of the stuff that was happening with that sarcophagus too. There's probably symbols that they were using, and they take these holy symbols, but then they try to make this association between this higher power, and like they try to make you afraid of it
Yeah.
by perverting it or changing it.
Hmm.
And the all-seeing eye is a really great one because actually you are the all-seeing eye and I am the all-seeing eye. Like we're all the all-seeing eye. It really represents awareness over the 3D dimensional realm. And I think maybe even the pyramid could be a representation of that three-dimensional realm. But the thing is that if they make you afraid of your own awareness, your own power, then then you're going to be searching for that in all kinds of different places. And when you search for something that you already have, it's very hard to find it.
Yeah.
It's like you have your sunglasses up on your head, you can't find it anywhere. You can look everywhere, you'll never find it until you sit down and you're like, oh my God. Oh, so
Yeah. 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 There's a lot to that. Like, the Vesca Pisces is the creation of the sacred geometry world. So the Vesca Pisces, it's like looks like a seed, right? But it's like a 3D version of the seed. Your eye. There's a reason it's this shape. It's projecting, it's creating, and it's showing us that what's in front of us isn't even really there. We're making it be.
and when you're perceiving the world too, I think you're seeing like an overlapping of your two like your left and your right. So there's kind of like because you notice you're never just seeing through one eye. It's an
Yeah.
overlapping of two hemispheres. So I
Yeah.
think that's probably creating a Vesica Pisces when you do that. There's probably
Probably.
it's like it's passing through or something.
Right. There's a lot of stuff about how we do this, like that we do this. It's just that, like, I'm in this place now, Josh, that I don't trust any of the knowledge I was ever given before. Like any of the things that we've learned, not just with history, but just what's been taken for granted as true regarding everything.
I know. I
You
know the
know,
feeling, definitely.
yeah, and one of those things is the upside down. You remember the upside down stories? Like, because everybody in like ninth grade or something, at least, were taught this story. There was this guy, and he got these glasses because what happens supposedly is everything's upside down. That was their way of explaining that gravity is gravity, the way that they say gravity is, that we're actually on a planet that's spinning, and that's all obviously not true. Like, I know some of the people in the audience might be like, wow, she's gone crazy, but that's actually it might sound kind of crazy, but there's a lot of proof about that, that we're actually not spinning. If we were spinning, when a helicopter went up, it would just have to hover and it would be in a different location very quickly. You could jump. You could jump and end up 5 feet or farther just by jumping up, right? If we're spinning.
Yeah, you would think so. I
Right.
mean, I guess I could see if the atmosphere was spinning too. I guess the explanation is that it's spinning so fast in relativity that you don't notice it. But I don't know. I always thought that was kind of a weird thing,
Yeah.
and I just chalked it up to, well, I don't know the science behind it, because I was quite young when I first encountered this. But I think it's worth questioning, certainly, because I mean, um, if the Earth, like, what do they mean by? I mean, we know that molecules spin, or we think we do, So I mean, when they say that something's spinning, are they saying that the Earth is literally spinning like a hundreds or not thousands of miles per hour or
Yeah.
something, like, and it's going so fast that it then stabilizes reality? I don't. It's like, wouldn't that mean that the Earth is a hologram or something? If that were even
Right.
true, like, what's it?
Right. And now they've gotten so far into VR headset, virtual reality kind of stuff. And I think it's funny that after I said that, someone had said, "What about flat Earth?" That's yeah, that's definitely what we're looking at. Like there's a lot of. I feel like flat earthers and globalists, I think is the other word. I think they're all right. I just there's more to it. It's more like a donut or something, but
Yeah, it does, like a toroid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so once now that we understand all of this, the whole story about our sight comes in upside down and it translates inside of us and flips it right side up. That now feels one of the real falsities that we were taught, because they were saying that was due to the fact that we're upside down because of the planet and the gravity and the way it spins and all this stuff. But like, um, now because there was this guy that they told about that he made glasses that made everything be upside down, and after a while of walking around like that for like a week or something, his eyes slowly adjusted, and then everything looked right side up, and he didn't realize it till he took the glasses off, and then everything was
And it was
upside down
up.
again. That's what they
That's
would
weird.
tell all of us, but I always felt like there was something about that story that wasn't. But that was something that everybody learned at some point in school, at least for my generation. I think you're like 11 years younger than me. So that's enough of a difference. The way that they teach, they update things and change all the time with the Rothschild method of teaching and school
It
that you
seems like
never
it
know.
gets even. Yeah, you don't really know, because I don't know. I just, like, with this whole AI thing and the whole, like, Mandela effect, like, literally, if they're changing little things in the reality and stuff like that, like, who's to say what is real and what isn't?
Exactly.
And I really wonder about, like, who are the people who are supposedly telling you that reality is, this is how it is and it's always been like this. And I'm like, how the hell do you know? You've been around for 40 years,
Yeah.
50 years, like some scientist somewhere. It's like, there's so much doctored information being passed down. We know there's a ton of information that's being actively suppressed all the time.
Hmm.
And it's not an isolated thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's in all the different quadrants of the whatever you want to call it, the human experience, archaeology and entertainment and science and religion and all this stuff. And you come to realize it's like, well, it's all being suppressed. It's not like they're not isolated incidences. It's all kind of a concerted effort in some way or another.
Hmm.
And honestly, it really does seem like reality is kind of a hologram. I mean, I think we know that anyway. We know that our consciousness affects reality. So it's definitely a projection. But it also seems like, man, I'm kind of losing my train of thought. There's like well, it's like, with like flat Earth and like the round Earth and the toroidal Earth, and it's like, all of these things could be true from a relative point of view. I think there's so many people arguing over what's the objective truth, and I'm like, well, dude, if it's a hologram, it can be changed based on who's perceiving it and what level of consciousness they're at. And because if you it goes back to like, having those astral experiences, having psychedelic experiences, things like that. Reality changes when you like have psychedelic experiences. And if you have enough people and they're in maybe if we all elevated into a higher level of consciousness like overnight, the
Right.
physical laws of this world could change along with that. Because for all we know, the physical laws of gravity and three-dimensional reality right now, they could be held in place simply by the belief in them. That
Yeah.
you have this number of people who believe in a certain thing, and then that can actually create a physical reality. And it
Hmm.
really brings to mind, like, sometimes we think about like the ancient past and how how did some of these megalithic sites came about, and how um, they had this technology, this sound frequency technology, and these kind of things. And it makes me wonder, were the physical laws of reality like literally different in the past? Like, could you actually like do levitate things and do things that we still can do, but maybe it's just like there's just so much more density, or there's like just different kinds of energy going on right now. Because it really seems like the very laws of reality fluctuate as the consciousness fluctuates.
Hmm.
And so again, this is just my intuitive feeling about it, but I really question a lot of the mainstream stuff, because it always seems to be delivered in such a point of, it's like they're always saying like, this is how it is. And
Yeah.
you know that's just how it is, we know how it is, and if you think anything else, well, you're clearly wrong.
Right.
And
We have a
that,
picture.
yeah,
Yeah.
precise measurements, and there's no possibility of it being anything different. And it's very arrogant. I think even if you have the most sophisticated technology or the most brilliant minds or whatever, there's still room for error.
Yeah.
There's always going to be um, room for new discoveries. And you know I mean, it's just, I could go on and on about it. So I
Oh yeah.
really wonder if me supposedly being somebody who is not in the know, I'm not an expert or a mainstream guy or anything, and I'm supposedly not supposed to know anything. If I can go on about this stuff and ask these kind of questions, and why are these experts just kind of closing the door
Mhm.
on it and thinking that that's acceptable?
Right.
It really
Right.
doesn't make sense.
Well, you hit something on the head that's really good to bring up too, or to just highlight again, is that a bunch of things. This is always fun talking to you. The mass manifestation methods that they use. In fact, Spirit told me about that. I didn't even come to that conclusion on my own. I was asking about The Simpsons. Actually, I wasn't even asking about the news. I was like, why are they getting it right so often? Like, what's the, because at the time there was like this, is it that they're seeing the future, or that they're intentionally creating that future? And the answer is yes. And the
Yeah.
reason it's yes, and the reason that it works, is that what is done, and everyone knows that, by the way, any of you probably followed this, know that, like, I believe 5 people are the owners, maybe less, are really the top of the food chain or whatever, of the ownership over all media outlets in this country, especially, like, but they're also in other countries too. And like, I remember during lockdown, they posted that thing where they had done, like, it looked like Brady Bunch, where there's a whole bunch of, like, and they were all saying exactly verbatim the same words, and it was about like the lockdown kind of stuff, and the reason that I'm talking about all of this is Spirit showed me that what's done is, especially like evening news. That's why social studies was so important. You had to prove you could get the newspaper and all that kind of crap. Is that if you tune in every night, 5 o'clock, um, if you miss it, then there's a late night one too, and you have to catch it. There's an urgency to it. Is that at that point they tell us what they want us to create by
Mhm.
saying it's true. Usually it's fear porn. Usually there's like a, oh no, like there's very rarely heartwarming stories told. And it's always like this conflict that's occurring, this thing that needs to be solved, this bad person, this bad thing. And over a very short window of time, everyone tuning in, like you said, the anchors are saying this is true. The scientists and experts they have on, they say it's true, and so everybody assumes that it is, and therefore they begin to create it.
Mhm.
Therefore, they are seeing the future. It's simply because they are the ones designing that future. If we disconnect, if we unplug from these places, it stops. Those realities slow.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing too, like when you do collective meditations, when you have a big group of people coming together in a live and you put like positive intention into it and you open up, well, what you were saying about the news, it's like at that one time, it's at 5 o'clock, you're getting all these people together at that same time and they're putting all their collective intention into whatever is going on that screen.
Yep.
So, and that's the thing, that's the weird thing about it is that it literally is like people are being they're being trained to use their own creative power to their own power to say that they are powerless.
Yeah.
They're using their own creativity to say that I don't have the power to create. And
Hmm.
that's like the big misconception about all of this is that when you turn the news off, it's like I don't, it swears that all this stuff is going on in the world and everything's falling apart and blah, blah, blah. I don't experience that. I
Yeah.
experience that when if I watch the news, which I don't, but sometimes people who I live with, they watch it and I
Right.
hear it in the background, but I just noticed, I also noticed the difference between, when I'm not doing that and I'm not getting into that stuff. And then I see, like, I live with my parents at the moment. They watch the news. They watch like these television programs with like guns and explosions and all this quote unquote normal stuff that's supposed
Right.
to be entertaining, I guess. And I notice that they have a totally different vibe than me.
Yeah.
And, it's because that's one of the big reasons because I step away from that stuff. And instead of staying inside and eating a bunch of food in the evening and filling my mind up with all this like really wild kind of negative stuff, I go outside for a walk, I go kayaking, I eat wild foods, I have spiritual conversations, and it creates a totally different environment
Yeah.
around me. And it actually it's funny too because I feel like it affects my parents in a positive way as well.
Oh
But I
yeah.
don't think they really make the connection. They're going to go back to the news and all that stuff, and if I were to say anything about it, be in one ear and out the other.
Right.
But people have to come to that conclusion on their own.
Right. And it's so indoctrinated that those who are super invested and don't have any reason to see that it's affecting them in such a dramatic way, are it's difficult to cause that that experience for them. Like, it's in fact, have you had this happen? This is the one that actually drives me the most crazy, I would say, about it, is that there, people want to do their thing, news it up. If that's really what you want to do, I found my life is so much happier when I don't. Our vibrations are better. And, like you said, those realities stopped existing. Like, it's not because I'm not looking at it, it's just I'm not creating it. So, therefore, it's not in my world. Then there are the people that start saying, that maybe are your neighbor or somebody that you don't know that well. And they'll be like, have you heard about what happened on the, oh, I don't watch the news. And you say that to tell them to stop, right? That would imply I'm not interested. But that what happens is this phenomenon. They panic, shout all of the recent news as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Like, you have to know, and it's like to the point where I was actually being chased by somebody who was trying to put their phone in my face. Like,
Really?
literally. Yeah,
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
stop.
Jesus.
Have you ever had that
That's
experience or something like
I
that? I mean,
well, yeah, I actually have. Like, I notice. Well, I started. I don't know how to word it, but it feels like sometimes the more that, well, it's weird because even though, like, on a physical level or like a more energetic level, it's the vibe is totally different. Say
mhm,
between you and like that neighbor who's watching the news, like there's still a reflection of you in your, they're still arising in the consciousness, the overall consciousness. So if you try to like shut it out or to tell them no, it's like it triggers that response even greater.
yeah,
It's like I notice when I'm like feeling a little irritated or I'm feeling like somebody comes around, like sometimes my dad, just use him as an example, I guess sometimes when I don't want to interact with him because he talks about all this, Donald Trump and all
mhm,
those Joe Bidens and all those friggin'
right,
guys. He likes to talk about that because he's listening to it. So I kind of just, the more that I try to resist that, the more that it has to come out of him because I think when I tense up about it, it creates pressure in him.
yeah,
And he's the reason that people get into this stuff is because they're already kind of at capacity.
mm,
It's almost like they have toxins and negative energies in their system, and so they use this news and all this stuff to kind of flush. They and the way they're doing it is they're cleaning out the toxins by putting new toxins in almost.
yeah,
So when it's like almost you have to almost be like more open. I don't know how to. I don't know. It's just if I try to resist him doing that, it like he
yeah,
totally will do it more.
yeah.
So I have
I
to
totally
kind of
feel
be, I have to just like hold space for him, and then
mhm,
he kind of just rests into it
great,
and doesn't talk about it nearly as much.
awesome.
So it seems kind of counterintuitive, but
You cracked the code. Good
yeah.
job. Thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's the same thing that I do when people are when we get flares of energy, people who don't even know me, like either they're really most of the time they're drawn to me because they feel the vibration and it actually you could tell that it improves their moment that they're in. But there are some people who are so wrought with this trauma and stuff that's going on that when they come into my sphere, they become upset. They don't even know me. I've got nothing. They're not even talking to me about anything to do with me, but they're yelling at me. And it's like, and what's the, because it's so silly what's happening and I know what's occurring. My thing is don't laugh. It's
Mhm.
hard
It is
because
hard,
yeah.
especially if they're acting really ridiculous.
Right, and they're just having a big ol' adult-sized temper tantrum, about because and I'm feeling the energy, I know what the energy's doing, I know that they're feeling it too, but they don't know what it is probably, so there's more of a panic associated with it, um, and but if I laugh, then I'm gonna have to do this for 20 more minutes, longer, And
Mhm.
that's the reason why I hold in that laugh, is not for any other reason. It's like it's I don't want to be here any longer than I have to with this person.
Exactly. Yeah, because there's definitely a point where you kind of hit that point where you know, like, okay, this is point of no return in a way.
Yeah,
They're too thoroughly triggered, and it's just not going to go anywhere.
yeah,
And I think that is too, that's something about like spiritual awakening also, and coming into that higher vibration, is that you know you do trigger trauma responses in others, and you do trigger fears and things. And sometimes people, they get ahead of themselves, and that defense mechanism comes up. And that's, I guess, one of the things that's been really helpful for me, even though it's not comfortable at all most of the time. But it's like, it shows me where maybe I'm resonating with that a bit, or I'm taking it personally, or not even that I'm trying to take it personally, but it's like we're kind of conditioned. Because you notice how, like, if somebody says something bad about you, or if they get angry about you or towards you, then that's because, oh, you did something wrong.
right,
And that's kind of the misconception. But a lot of the time, coming into this more spiritual understanding of life, it's like, no, that's actually, that has much more to do with how they align themselves. Like, that
yeah,
has much more to do with what kind of energy they're carrying around, and how they see the world. Because they really don't know you on a an intimate level or an energetic level. And maybe they're just looking for someone to validate their preconceived notions of reality. And
right,
when you don't do that, and you actually come to them like more authentically than they are willing to be themselves, it's like, what do I do? I
yeah.
don't. What is this? This authenticity? Oh my God, I'm not used to this. It's,
And you're
so.
inspiring something for them. You get to more and more people are finding that the people. I think that's the one real use of social media, is that these most of the time what happens is when we plant a seed, the the one who plants the seed rarely harvests, is the saying. And so, you're going to be the one that plants the seed, and you're likely not going to see that person again. Though what's happening is that people are finding these individuals because that person left a deep lasting impact on them. Maybe it ended they parted ways in tension, at back in the day, but that something changed. Over time, that person did become enlightened as a result, become more aware. I, I've been noticing a lot of people over the past, especially the past decade, but in particular since lockdown. Like the people who would had previously passed judgment and called me certain words, like I was the crazy garden lady for a long time.
Mm.
And after a while, these individuals they start coming to you and asking you questions, like uh, the- and questions that you wouldn't expect them to even know existed, you know, like what crystal do you use? Stuff like that. It's kind of fun to see this happening, though, you know, just like you said, this is one of your aspects that's coming to you, or that's running away from you, or that's being, causing a trigger in you. This is us. Like you're the crow, you're your dad, we're everybody in our experience. And if you understand that echo, then we can see too that it's like you said, bringing up something that had been left unseen that needed to be healed,
Hmm.
right?
And it's kind of the same energy in a way between you and that other person.
Yeah,
Because a lot of time, because somebody, they might feel triggered, or they might have a pain in their system, something that's going on. But the way that it affects you is dependent on, how much you resonate with that.
yeah,
And sometimes you can be around people who are going through some very intense psychological stuff, and it doesn't really make you feel insecure, or doesn't scare you or hurt you or anything like that. But if there is something maybe there's some pain or woundedness in yourself that hasn't been healed. When they are experiencing a similar thing, that can really bring that to the surface.
Yeah.
And usually, I found to it's usually it I guess it's like where we take it more personally, I guess. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but um, the more personally you take things, usually that's the more that you kind of hold that energy in,
Yeah.
and it will resonate with other people who are doing the same thing. So it's actually a really wonderful thing. I guess you can use the example of the ego. I don't know if that's the best word again, because ego can be interpreted in many different ways, but um, it's actually good to kind of have. Well, I don't know if ego is the best word. Maybe like that more serpentine side of ourselves, a serpentine mind or whatever.
Mhm.
But that dominating side of ourselves, the stronger that is, actually, the weaker will you become,
Mhm.
and the weaker that serpentine side of yourself, the weaker that need for control and that need to dominate. Well, actually, your spirit shines through much more
Yeah.
strongly. So it's actually good, like if somebody comes to you and they have a very strong ego and it's a very like they're really controlling, that's like that's a kind of encounter that you normally don't want to have. But if you kind of learn to be authentic and just kind of stand firm in that, you realize that by them kind of breaking down your defenses and breaking down your resistances, you're actually shining much bigger. Like, let them break down your walls, because you don't want to live inside walls, and they can take those bricks and build it up around themselves all they want, because
Yeah.
that's what they kind of tend to do, if how someone is oriented.
Right.
And I find that too about the spiritual process is like, um, it's so much a process of dissolution and breaking down barriers and breaking down the more rigid aspects of life, and kind of, sometimes people use the analogy of breaking your heart open, you know
Mhm.
not literally breaking, but expanding it, like kind of getting out of like an acorn cracking out of its shell,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need a bit of that pressure to break that shell, but once it happens, beautiful things really grow. So, you
Yeah.
know, it can all be medicine in its own way.
And it's all worth it. It's all worth and being the trigger is an activation. The activation is a trigger. Like once we can get through that, because I know that there's like this. I don't know. I haven't heard it for a little while, but there was a time when, anytime that something was said that was, I don't know, that person wasn't ready to look at or something, they would like trigger, trigger, and they'd blame you, like it's your fault, like how dare you, say that thing that would you let me educate you, kind of thing. And it's interesting because actually triggers are activations and a gift. Not that I'm going to go and find your button and push it. It's just if
Yeah,
it gets pushed, and just like you said, I can't make you happy. I can't make you sad. I can't make you be any way. And so when someone comes up and says, "You made me mad," then, like you said, that person's got some stuff to deal with, to work
yeah,
through,
and and
and
that you didn't make them mad; they were already mad.
right. Right. It triggered something for them to look at. And this is the one that I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't get so much enjoyment out of this, but I think it's because I spent so many, probably even lifetimes, at least this lifetime, not standing my ground about things like this, and standing up for myself in that way. But um, people get really aggressive about wanting you to apologize to them, and it's a new thing I've been doing for a while. I At a younger age, I apologized about everything. Someone would drop something across the room and I'd apologize. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that just, I didn't know how that was part of who I was. And I removed that. I'm removing that. And some people, when they become offended, when you made them mad, they expect you to apologize. And when you don't, they'll tell you, don't you feel like apologizing to me right now?" No. And I also remove my consent for any manipulation, any further manipulation from you. You're welcome to feel how you'd like. I have nothing to do with your experience. I love you, and I'm going to go over here where it doesn't suck. Bye. It's kind of how and I'm being a little bit more less graceful just in this example, but like that, those types of moments are pivotal in our awakening too, of saying, you know what, I'm removing my consent. If you remove your consent from manipulation across the board, your whole reality will fall apart in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the things, um, well, for one thing, when you withdraw that agreement, you know, it's not a real agreement that you consciously made. It's
Right.
usually you feel pressured into making it at a young age, and it goes on undetected. So
Yeah.
you kind of compromise yourself, to stay safe or to like fit in with what other people expect of you. And later on in life, that gets to be a problem because you become like kind of root bound. You're a plant that needs to grow outside of these constraints. And so sometimes I think it's good to, like, you shouldn't have to apologize for how someone else feels.
Mhm.
um, you know this and the thing is about standing firm, however you want to stand firm, whatever works for you as your unique being. Like, that's what you should do. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. And also, you don't want to apologize to people who are demanding apologies,
Yeah.
because then they're going to go around and do that to everyone else, and
Mhm.
they're never going to get over their own hangups.
Yeah.
So to conform to people's expectations when they're being kind of snotty, or they're being domineering or whatever, like, that doesn't help them ascend spiritually.
Right.
And it actually keeps you feeling low too, because you think that, oh yeah, I did something wrong, you're right.
Right.
it's I find the best thing is just to be yourself, to be totally authentic, and take your ultimate reading from like the spirit and from the intuition that's inside of you. And if that flies in the face of societal norms, and they better catch up, I guess.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then because spirit obviously isn't going to try to thrust you into sticky situations constantly, but there's going to be moments where you are going to have to stand firm. um, and it's not that you're trying to be defiant. You're not even trying to be a rebel or anything.
Right.
You're just moving the energy through as it wants to move. And if somebody's resisting that, yeah, they might get bowled over a little bit.
Right. Right.
And they might get kicked onto their ass, but it's not going to be you who does it. It's going to be the cosmos that's doing it. It's
Exactly.
the universe is trying to move, and it's bigger than you, and it's bigger than me, and it's bigger than this other person, and we all have to be respectful of that.
Right.
So
And I like that you pointed that out, that you're also missing a teaching opportunity. You're helping that person when you don't engage. Also, I know this sounds, every one of us can resonate with this, though many people don't realize it's actually occurring, is the psychic arguments we have in the showers throughout the years. When I came to the realization that the other person is also in the shower or wherever having the same kind of experience, that's why it feels so real. That's, like, this was an earlier time. I haven't done it in a long time, but that was something I did. Like, if there was like a conversation when you didn't say what you meant to say, or something
oh
happened, there
yeah.
was conflict, and they're actually, the reason that it's still like, the energy is still so there, is that they're doing the same thing. It's a literal psychic exchange, a telepathic conversation, only it's an
Oh.
argument, and we're using the water element to amplify our psychic abilities,
Oh,
so that's why we're on the toilet or in the shower or doing the dishes when we do these things usually.
that makes sense. Actually, I'd never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
But you do, and that's one of those things too. Like, if you wish you had said something, you didn't say it in the moment, and then you go off somewhere else and you say, and then you finish the argument or whatever. um like, I sometimes, and one of the things I didn't like is when somebody, um they would have an argument with somebody. Like my dad would do this thing where he would get into a tense exchange with somebody, but he wouldn't say what he really wanted to say. And then
Mhm.
so he would come later on, I would meet up with him for whatever reason, and he'd tell me about it, and then he'd look at me and tell me what he was going to say to the other person,
Yeah.
and it would feel like he would project it right at me. So I'd be like, no, don't do that. So I kind of shut that out,
Good.
stopped that from happening. But I could see that too with the shower, because it's such a the water is cleansing your aura too.
Yeah.
So if you did have that kind of energy stuck in there, maybe that's like a way of releasing it and
Right.
helping it out. And that
That's
would be
good.
really interesting if, if that other person, they're in the shower and that's what was compelling you to do it, and
Yeah.
maybe that's like karma working itself out,
Yeah.
across the physical distance.
Right. I only came to the conclusion, the realization after I realized I stopped doing that. I don't have that. I well, just like you were saying earlier, we call our experience to us, right? We give the universe our Christmas list, if as it were, or our order for the day, and we don't always realize what we're asking for, because
Hmm.
those are the energies we're engaging in. So if we're engaging in conflict, if we're participating in these confrontations regularly, like um, if you're the common denominator in conflict and drama, there's something to evaluate there. There's something to address. And what changed is I just stopped participating. Like, there was a time where there were people in my life, mostly siblings, who had become accustomed to me. Eventually, after you text me enough times, I would then become irritated and be like, "Ah," and react back. And then then they've initiated what they wanted to, right? I just stopped. I just stopped, and after a while, it was hard to wait. But after a while, all of those things stopped, and not just specific individuals. I'm talking about, like, strangers would enter with conflict and confrontation drama crap, like, place it would just come from every direction, until I stopped placing that order. I stopped eating what they delivered at the restaurant, is this the analogy here, right? I stopped accepting what was being given me, and that stopped being served, you
Yeah,
know
yeah. I noticed that too when I was quite younger. I because I When I was a teenager, I didn't want to stay at home because I felt like there was so many problems with living here, and just being kind of. But then I would go out and I'd move out to another place and I'd go hang out with other people and I'd have all the same problems
Yeah.
and I'd have the same arguments with different people. And I started to realize that there was like this kind of deeper order to it all, like part of it was that I was carrying some of that energy around. Other part of it was that I guess it was like I was kind of asking for it in a way,
Yeah.
thinking that I wasn't, but on a deeper level, I was kind of, associating with it. And even to this day, like there's still like physical tensions and aches and pains in the body that come up that I know intuitively are actually associated with things that I used to do years ago. And because sometimes I get into these same mind state as like it's like I'm 15 again, or and this thing has just happened, and I'm like, oh, how dare they? And I'm like, wait, what am I doing?
Hmm.
I haven't felt like that in 20 years. Like, what am
Yeah.
I doing? Like getting into that, and I realized that sometimes we spend so much time asking for the wrong thing or asking for arguments and this kind of thing that it ripples out into our future. Even when we stop asking for it, there can be some residual stuff, echoes that keep coming up. And so a lot of the what we call healing journeys, I think a lot of that is just kind of letting go of the residual echoes of the old stuff, really.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of this that needs to be cleared out, this echo, the residual. And that's really what's happening on a planetary scale globally, for the inhabitants of the planet as well as the planet itself. That's why we're seeing so much activity going on, like, and so when this purge is happening, that's the other part that just reminded me of this, is that that's the other part of this, is there's a lot of like swelling energy, like almost like a geyser or a volcano, just that's coming out for a lot of people. And um, those who have no idea what's going on are compromised.
Mhm.
They're in this fear place. Like when someone's in fear, their energy looks like a tracer. They're like the. I remember there was that movie called The Jumper, and like
Oh yeah,
and when they had that
like
electric,
teleport.
he couldn't go anywhere. He was like 18 places, but he couldn't leave. Like that's what a person in fear looks like. There are too many minds. That's the and um I don't know why I completely blanked just now, but I was just looking at this vibration that people are keeping, and it affects us. It actually ripples out. It looks kind of like percussion waves, and so 333. Oh, we need to wrap this up soon. Actually, we've been
Yeah,
talking for an hour and a half. Well,
yeah,
I
just
guess we
about.
both got here a little bit late, but it's been about an hour and a half since I've been on. Holy crap! Um. Anyway,
Likewise.
the point is that as the other people's awakenings are occurring, just remember that they're going through what they're going through, and you don't have to jump in the hole with them. They've dug themselves a pit, and each one of us have. That's how it works. That's part of the dark night of this whole process, is figuring out how to get out of that pit. And if you jump in the pit, you can't pull anybody out. Now you're both in the pit.
Yeah. And you like sometimes you don't want to throw a rope to somebody who's just going to pull you down with them.
Yeah.
If you know, I think too sometimes people we have a tendency to like I don't know, I guess like sometimes if you talk about spiritual things you can seem like you're kind of like putting yourself up on a pedestal or something.
Mm,
Some people interpret it that way, but I don't really think it's that way. I think we're just on
yeah.
the ground, we're on the earth, we're on the level ground, and then other people who are maybe have negative thoughts about themselves, they're kind of digging themselves lower than everyone else and thinking that you're so much higher up because you're
Yeah.
on the earth,
Right.
so it's the relativity from which these things are seen is so important.
Yeah.
And it really does come back to like the more inner work you do on yourself, like it's just the smoother your reality becomes.
Hmm.
That's what I've definitely found to be true.
Definitely. And that the irony of it is hilarious, because um those who do have that judgment that we've placed ourselves above them in some way, because the irony of it is that the more spiritual you become, the more honest and sharing a person becomes. Therefore, I mean, authentic in the way of, everyone's shit stinks. You know what I mean? Like it's not, like, I don't know why it's such a big secret. Everybody farts. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
everybody. These types of things where people make a big deal about, and like, oh, they're so perfect and blah blah blah. No, dude, we all have our stuff still. And each one of us are still here and engaging, and we're still getting our activations by triggering. We're still having all of this stuff happening. It's just that the difference is that we see it and acknowledge it and choose to move through it. Like, people will see me and think that, like, I'm like somebody who came from privilege. I come from generation upon generation um, of the cycle of poverty, cycle of abuse type stuff. Like, and the kind of abuse that I came from. It, like, I've met with psychiatrists and counselors who dropped their pencils, when they were hearing my story, saying, I cannot believe you've experienced what I'm telling you that because, like, only because you don't have to stay the way you are. Everybody's been through trauma. And look, you can be happier. It's not about
absolutely.
being better than somebody else. It's being better than my previous self. I'm in
Exactly.
I'm returning to who I truly am, you know. Oh, yeah, Carrie, I wanted to. There is a Zoom meeting tonight. It's actually going to happen in a little less than an hour from now. Um, and the link for that is in our community section of the YouTube channel, as well as in the Telegram group. And I also started a YouTube group that I've just barely started, so I've not really been super active yet. But the links are in those places. And so on YouTube, it's called the High Vibe Tribe, or Facebook is called the High Vibe Tribe. Is there our group if you're interested in joining that group and finding that link? And I hope that everybody who's in the audience joins us. You're welcome. It's free. You don't have to have your camera on. You don't have to talk, but I hope you join. So um, we probably can talk for like 1 or 2 more minutes if you have anything more you want to add, but then I need to go wake my kid up before we have our group.
Well, I think you're really a bright example, very shining example of, you can come from very hard circumstances and grow to inspire many. Because this is a really beautiful community that you've built up, and has grown around you, and and I wouldn't be here talking like this. This has been really cool. This is like the first time I've ever done anything like this, and it's like this support that everybody is giving. Everybody is giving me and giving everybody else. It's like it's really inspiring. It's really heartwarming to see that. Especially again, like we just like what we're talking about. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. A lot of people are feeling their traumas, and they're feeling triggered, and it's really nice to to know that it's working out, and that we're all healing together. And I think that this is just a beautiful example of that, of what's really possible. So thank you for this. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you. That was well said. And I really, really enjoy having you. So if you ever want to come back, just seriously let me know. And you are most welcome. In a group setting, one on one, I feel like we only just really scratched the surface.
I know, right? We could have gone 3 hours easily, I
Right,
think.
easy. Yeah, we really could have. And so I hope that there's at least a part two. And so just let me know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do this again, definitely.
Awesome. Awesome. And thank all of you for being in the audience and giving your support. Like Josh said, this has been really cool. I I am honored to watch this community build up around me. The way that you said they grow up around you is more correct because I didn't do anything. Like I just said I finally agreed and conceded to Archangel Michael's torment and did what he said because I didn't want to. I kept giving him the middle finger, but I am not a big camera person. That's the big thing. I never did FaceTime before, and I always am the blur or the one on the other side of the camera. So it's weird coming on screen. I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. And
And
once
you
you do,
seem so
though,
natural at it too.
what was that?
It's it's funny that you say that, because you seem like you've been doing it forever. Like you're just so natural at it.
Yeah, I'm just me wherever I go. I've never had the stage fright phenomenon, speaking in public problem, but I just don't give a flying F what people think of me.
Yeah, that's the way. That's the right attitude to have, I think.
Well, once again, thank you. I do need to wrap this up. I gotta go wake up my kid and make her breakfast. I cannot believe she's still asleep. It's summer. Well, and again, we're having our Zoom meeting in 50 minutes. So if 5050, so if you are here live right now, you can find that link and see us in that time. Otherwise, um, we meet every Wednesday, and if we aren't going to meet, I will post a cancellation or a postponement link. So if it's ever delayed, please just know it's coming and that we are going to meet. So anyway, um, and I hope to see y'all there. Thanks again. Thank you. Aho
Bye,
blessings.
everyone.